Hey guys, once again, it's been a while, as always, and welcome to this edition of Why Derek Doesn't Have Any Money at All. So yeah, this is a vinyl update video. I know I said I was going to make one forever ago. This isn't all of the records that I've had since that last video went out, which was almost 6 months ago at this point. This is all the records that I've gotten A through E? No, A through H. These are all the records that I've gotten since that video that are alphabetically A through H. And I've also broken them up a little bit into kind of playlists, almost. When I get into new music, I tend to get into it in groups. Like, I'll find an artist that I like, and then find other artists similar to that sound, and then make a little couple album playlist and listen to it a lot, normally on Spotify. And then I buy it on vinyl and have a physical playlist, so it's kind of fun. So it's broken up into a couple playlists, largely, and then there's just a big playlist of stuff that's just regular kind of alternative music. But enough rambling, let's just get started with it. So these first couple of albums, I would put under kind of a instrumental / electro experimental type playlist. I don't know, you'll see. If you know any of the artists, maybe you'll know what I'm talking about. This is an album by a German musician named Apparat. I don't know his actual name, but he goes by Apparat. And the name of the album is Krieg und Frieden. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, probably not, and that's German for music for theater. He's largely an instrumental musician. There are only 2 tracks on this album that actually have vocals on them, but those are actually 2 of my favorite tracks on this album, so I'm a little bit disappointed that he doesn't do more tracks with vocals, and I think they're his vocals, I'm assuming, but still, it's a really interesting, not quite ambient, I want to call it. Some of the tracks definitely fall under ambient, but other ones not so much, just kind of experimental, classical / electronic kind of combined music. And I absolutely love this album art. What first made me want to listen to this album was I saw a kind of indie film called Equals, and one of his tracks was in it, and I loved it, so I checked out the rest of the album and fell in love with that as well. So I have this, it's really, 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 really good. This next album is Olafur Arnalds. Again, he's Icelandic, so I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. But this is his album Ellipses, and They Have Escaped the Weight of Darkness. I think this is probably his best known record that he's put out. He is a classical musician. It's just really, really nice classical music. It's a little sad and morose at times, but it's just really calming and nice to put on. I discovered this guy actually from it was a movie that I watched called Press Pause Play, I think it is, about modern music making, and they featured Olafur Arnalds. And it was a really interesting documentary, and I would definitely recommend watching it and also checking this guy out, because it's really, really nice. If you like classical music at all, piano and strings largely, definitely check it out. And the last album in this playlist, is Spaces by Nils Fram, or Fram. Again, not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Nils, Fram, something like that. This is actually a live album. It's not like a straight through concert recorded, but all of the tracks on here were recorded live. Some of them are previously unrecorded, some of them are on some of his other releases, which I'm not actually familiar with any of his other releases. This is the only album by him that I know, but I really like it. Again, it's all instrumental, although this is much more electronic and techno-y than Olafur Arnalds for sure. You don't get a lot of strings and piano in this. It's all kind of synthesizers and really interesting on-stage mixing type kind of stuff. I like the packaging of this a lot. This is a little die cut in here where you can take it out like that, and then they give you a couple of different inserts that you could put in if you wanted to. This is the original, and I like it the best, so I leave it in. But you could, if you wanted to, swap it out for this cool photo of some of his synthesizers if you wanted. It's a double LP, actually. And one of the odd things about this is actually on the inside of it, in here, it's like a printed photo. You can see a couple like spotlights in there. And I don't know why they bothered, because it's impossible to see. You can't see it through here. You can only see it just kind of through there. Just an odd little thing, I guess, they decided to do. Alright, so that's it for whatever that playlist was. Next I'm moving on to kind of The words that I found to describe are trip hop and acid jazz, perhaps. And the first one is The Avalanches, their debut album, and up until recently, only album, but they put out a second album just a couple months ago. Since I Left You. They are an Australian group, I believe. I think there were maybe 7 of them back then. They were a relatively large group. So this was right back in the early 2000s, 2001 or so, and all these samples on this came off of vinyl records, I believe, and then they used some probably, drum machines to make beats and whatnot, and just mix it all together to make this really, really interesting album. Definitely an iconic album. I feel like it was a bit more iconic before they decided to put out another record, because, it's one of those fun, they formed a band, put out an album in 2001, and then just nothing. But then they put out another album, so whatever. But yeah, definitely give this a listen if you're at all into that early 2000s, late 90s vinyl sample kind of music, because this is definitely one to listen to. A more modern musician, this is Dark Star. They are a duo out of England, and again, it's not quite trip hop. It's definitely kind of in there though, a lot of mixed, repeating beats, stuff. It's really kind of hard to describe. One of the cool things about this record is that it came with this like art book type thing. It's just this 12-inch by 12-inch kind of little photo collection of people, and I think there are people that they recorded audio of them talking and mixed some of it into the record, of them just talking about their hometown and where they came from, I believe. It's interesting to look through. It's just a couple pages, but they're just photos of people. It says Fate in Disguise on the back. Not sure what they mean by that. But it's just interesting that they added that little extra kind of conceptual thing to their album. I feel like not enough artists have fun with their packaging and what they can really do with this larger format compared to a CD. Next, another iconic album from the early days of trip hop, DJ Shadow's Introducing. This came out in 97, I want to say. Don't know. If you're at all into the trip-hop scene, you must have heard of this album. His most popular song by far is Building Steam with a Grain of Salt, and if you look it up on Spotify or online and play it, you'll probably recognize it. I think a number of years ago it was in a car commercial or something. But I remember years and years and years ago, my sister put that song on a little mixtape that she gave to my brother and I, and then I rediscovered it just a few years ago when I was in college, and I was like, oh my gosh, that song was so good, and it still holds up today. It's such a good tune, and this whole album is just so good. All these sampled vinyl bits all mixed together to make really just interesting songs, and it's got a really good flow. Derek, what the hell are you even saying? And what are you doing with your arm? Just move on to the next record. Alright, again, so that was it for the kind of trip-hoppy type music that I've gotten recently. Now on to what I can only call kind of fuzzy female-led pop rock, I guess. We're starting off with Always, spelled Alvvays. It's pronounced Always, though. Love this album cover. I just love the colors of it and how striking it is. It just automatically kind of feels like a timeless, iconic album cover. And on the back, it's got the track listing of all the songs, and it's like a photograph or a scan of paper cutouts, and I really like that look, just kind of handcrafted, and then that kind of reflects the sound of the music itself. It's very fuzz poppy, kind of lo-fi, pretty simple songs, but it's really fun to listen to, and definitely a summer album, kind of a lazy summer day vibe for sure. And this copy is pressed on 180 gram, what did they call it? They had a certain name for this color blue, I forget what it was, but blue vinyl. It looks great spinning on a turntable. It's got a little bit of white and darker blue flecks kind of in there. If you're looking to get into female vocals, kind of lo-fi sound, definitely check out Always. And if you haven't heard of her yet, then what have you been up to? This is Courtney Barnett's debut full-length album, Sometimes I Sit and Think, and Sometimes I Just Sit. I love that album name. But she is from Australia. She's got a really fun garage band type sound, and one of the songs on here, Pedestrian at Best, which is, that's probably her hit song. I love just screaming it in my car when I'm driving around. It's a really fun song to sing. Again, this is a colored record. I've really been trying to get the colored versions of vinyls if I can recently, and this is on pink vinyl. vinyl. And lastly, in this female-led kind of lo-fi sound, I have Best Coast's most recent record, California Nights. I stumbled across Best Coast. How did I find them? I think just going through Spotify. Maybe they showed up on my Discover Weekly playlist. And I really, really like their sound. This is their third album, I believe. And as the name of the album might imply, they're out of California, and it's really just a duo. It's our lead singer, I don't know her name, and this guy who does most of the lead guitar and helps with the writing sometimes, I think. I don't know his name either. I've only just kind of recently gotten into these guys, and again, along with Courtney Barnett, and always a really good kind of lazy summer day listen. Favorite song of this has got to be its title track, California Nights. Just the melody to it is really, really nice. Alright, so the rest of these are just alphabetically the albums that I've gotten into that are just general alternative, essentially. Alt J's debut album, An Awesome Wave. It took me a while to get into Alt J. I knew about them when they had their singles going on. Their alternative radio station around me would play them a bunch. But again, like I said, it just took a little while for me to get into them. My brother hates his voice, but it grew on me. I quite like it, and I really, really like their percussion. I feel like that is really a unique sound that they have going on, is the way their drums sound. Really like this album cover. I'm assuming it's some kind of aerial shot of some kind of rivers and estuaries and deltas, maybe, or maybe I'm completely wrong and it's some like macro shot of, I don't know, blood. I have no idea. The colors are really cool. Just definitely a good depiction of their sound, I think. Now this album set me back quite a few bucks. This is Anberlin's Dark is the Way, Light is a Place. I got into these guys when I was in high school. Actually, it's kind of an odd story. My Chemical Romance, who, as you know, I'm a massive fanboy of, were doing a show out in California sometime, I have no idea when it was, but they were going to live stream it. The whole concert was live streamed, and Anberlin opened for them, and so I tuned into the live stream and heard them perform, and I'd never heard of them before, and they performed their song Closer off this album, and I really, really liked it. So I checked out the rest of this album and realized just how much I really like this album, and also a lot of their other stuff. I've never gotten into a whole album of theirs other than this one, but just on a whole, I'm a fan. This album, I think they only did the one pressing of it, so it's kind of hard to come by, so I had to buy this off eBay for more than I'd like to admit. But I really, really like this album. It just reminds me so much of my time in high school, and it's got a really, really good, just kind of heavier alt-rock feel to it. Some really solid songwriting. And the final track on this, Depraved, is one of my favorite songs. Love that tune. One of my favorite final tracks on an album, and I'm a sucker for finisher tracks. And I just love this album cover because it's so odd. Is it an illustration? I really don't know. It's a horse just falling in white space. And if it's not an illustration, I wonder how they got this picture of a horse just falling. I hope a horse didn't get hurt. Very simple, but striking, you know? So this was a bit of an impulse buy. This is the Antlers album, Hospice. It was ranked by Pitchfork as one of 2009's best album. I know that because there was a sticker of that on it when I bought it, and that's largely the reason I purchased it. I know there was one song off this that I stumbled across once on Spotify that I saved and favorited, and I recognized the album cover when I saw this in the record store, but hadn't listened to that track probably since I saved it, but I knew it was in there somewhere, so I knew there was something about their sound that I liked. And prior to seeing this, I thought this hadn't been released on vinyl, but I guess I was mistaken. So I picked it up just because of all of those things, and I've listened through it, I think, 2 or 3 times now, and it's got a very kind of eerie, spooky sound to it. And even the inserts kind of reflect that. It's got just a picture of this old kind of hospital ward, and it's really kind of just creepy and spooky, and the songs kind of reflect that feel. Just very quiet, kind of ambient soundscapes that they're creating. A really interesting sound, definitely very morose. But I like it. It's nice. And really, I couldn't call myself a proper young hipster collecting records if I didn't pick up Melophobia, Caged Elephant's third album, which everyone seemed to lose their minds over. Rightfully so. It's a really, really good album. Really like this record. I got into Caged Elephant back when I was in high school. A couple of their singles were on the alternative radio station around me. and I never really got into a whole album of theirs. Their first and second album, just some of the tracks were a little too odd for me, but this one was really a home run. There isn't a track on this that I don't like. And I would have to say my favorite tracks are Telescope and It's Just Forever, which are back to back. Just noise rock mixed with garage band, mixed with kind of punky, and just a little chaotic at times, which is, it's nice. Moving on to something a little quieter, I finally picked up City and Color's sophomore album, Bring Me Your Love, and by adding this album to my collection, in my mind I've completed my Canadian folk kind of trifecta that my friend Lex introduced me to. So it was this album along with Hey Rosetta's sophomore album and Dan Mangan's sophomore album, and this is a sophomore album. Just kind of odd how that all kind of worked out, that they're all sophomore albums. But I actually bought this album maybe 2 years ago from a record store up in Buffalo, New York, but when I brought it home, it was super warped, and you could actually hear it when it played back. The record had this big bend in it, so I returned it for store credit. So I eventually finally bought another copy of it, and I'm glad to say this one is not warped. Love this album. Some of my favorite tracks actually to play on acoustic guitar are on this, and if you saw my video where I played the guitar and sang, which I kind of regret putting that video up, it came off of this album. It's largely just vocals and an acoustic guitar for a lot of these, with some minor percussion and other instrumentation. Very stripped down, really, really solid writing, and an amazing singer. And seeing this album cover, you might be like, oh, what's that? You know, it's just black and a few odd little red things. Well, haha, a man's head has been cut off, and that is the blood. If you watched my previous video, you know I already have Coldplay's debut album and also Ghost Stories. Well, I've added to my Coldplay collection. I have picked up A Rush of Blood to the Head and X and Y, which is a massive release. It's, if you can see this, it's a really thick release. It's only a double LP. It's not like there's 3 or 4 albums, but just the way they packaged it, it's like a ½ inch thick. Well, I'll get back to this. More about the other one first. A Rush of Blood to the Head with the iconic songs Clocks and The Scientist on it. 2 of my favorite songs by Coldplay, along with just about anyone else who listens to Coldplay, I think. I love on this album seeing how Coldplay progressed from their first album, which is so acoustic and very simple, to this one. They're really trying more things, adding more instrumentation and being less just, you know, acoustic guitar, drums, bass, vocals, and piano keys. They're really kind of mixing it much more, having a louder noise, and just experimenting more with their sound. Really interesting to see them grow on this album. Okay, back to X and Y. So, like I said, this is a massive package, just a double LP, but it comes with a huge poster of the album cover. It's like, look at this thing. It's huge. And then on the back of it, it's got this, which I actually took the time to decode, and I forget what it says. But it was something about like fair trade, like maybe there's something, this album was connected to some kind of like fair trade movement or something, anti-slavery thing. I don't really know, but if you have it, take the time to decode it. It's a fun time, because they give you a little key, and then you can decode the things on it, and they're all words, and the cover, according to that code, does actually say X and Y. So this is an album by a band called The Districts. This is their sophomore album called A Flourish and a Spoil. Love this album cover. There's just something odd and eerie about it. If you can't see, it's like a grapefruit or an orange that's had all of its, you know, sections pitted out of it, and then it's made to look like it's on a flower stem. So I know of this band because I discovered one of their songs called 6 AM. It's the final track on this album, and it's one of the like worst recording quality songs I've ever heard, where the audio is clipping all the time and it's super fuzzy, but it was intentionally made to sound like that. But something about it really struck a chord with me, and I decided to check out the rest of their album, and I kind of bought this blindly, not actually having listened to the rest of the album, only knowing that one song, but I wasn't disappointed. It's a good album to listen to, and it's got a very kind of handmade feel to it, with this kind of watercolor painting, and all of the lyrics are handwritten on the back here. If you like really kind of lo-fi, grungy sounding kind of songs, definitely check out their track 6 AM. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Throwback album here. This is The Phrase How to Save a Life. Smash hit back when I was in, oh gosh, what was I even in high school yet? I think it might have been in middle school when this album came out, and it took me forever to actually get into this album, but it's such a solid album through and through, and it's a double LP on kind of an odd mottled white and yellow. See, it's kind of like a pale yellow, white, and the other record is much more white than yellow than this one. Interesting color, kind of reflects the color of the light on the front of it. Whenever I listen to this, I'm definitely taken back to a time when you heard bands like The Script and Keen on the radio and Snow Patrol and that kind of stuff. Alright, we're down to our last two, and keep in mind this is just A through H of what I've picked up in the past 6 months. So what I've got here is Keaton Henson's debut album, Dear. This is such a nice kind of homemade album, just Keaton Henson and his very high, soft, kind of haunting vocals and his guitar, and how incredibly shy and timid of a man he is just shines through on this record. And it can get very morose and kind of sad at times. The whole album's sad. Let's just get it out there. It's a very sad album. But nice to listen to. A really nice songwriting, very quiet music. And this pressing comes with 3 bonus songs, actually. So that's really cool. I'm not sure if the other ones do. Maybe they all do. Maybe it's not special to this. But it comes with 3 bonus tracks compared to his other albums. And I also have Keaton Henson's second album, Birthdays. I thought it was Happy Birthday. Nope, just called Birthdays. Love this album cover. It's so odd. It's just like this sad porcelain woman crying. It really reflects the kind of music. Now this album isn't as sad as is the other album, but it's definitely still very morose, very kind of sad and down. But there are some tracks in this where he really gets upbeat, really gets going. Like Kronos is a really upbeat song. And then there are other songs like Sweetheart, What Have You Done to Us, where he's just ripping his heart out and crying. So that's it, at least for A through H. Hopefully soon I'll do the rest throughout the rest of the alphabet of what I've picked up since then. Maybe it'll be another 6 months. I hope it's not, though. I hope I can start making videos more regularly. I really need to pick up my camera more and make more stuff. Because it feels good to make stuff. If you're a maker, a creative person, you know the feeling. So yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Do you have any recommendations for what I should listen to, knowing now kind of, more of the stuff that I listen to? Let me know, please. If you like this video, give it a like. If not, until next time, guys, this has been me.